Now, from the University of Virginia Center for Politics.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Beautiful day to be on grounds and great day to have great guests with us today. Welcome to this Ambassador Series and Global Week event hosted by the UVA Center of Politics and UVA Global. I am Dr. David Ramadan, a former member of Mr. Jefferson's House, the Virginia House of Delegates, and currently a scholar at UVA Center for Politics. As an Arab American, I'm proud to be here today to welcome Her Excellency Sheikha Zain al-Sabah, Ambassador of Kuwait to the United States. Kuwait has long been an important ally of the United States. Official diplomatic relations were established back in 1961, after Kuwait's full independence from the United Kingdom, though the first consulate was opened 10 years prior to that. Since then, the relationship between our countries has strengthened not only during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, but continuing into the present through a wide range of economic, cultural, and defense ties. I've traveled extensively to Kuwait. Drove out of the airport on George Bush's highway and shopped in Kuwait's beautiful malls, incredible size malls. I think one of them had about 10 Starbucks in it in one mall. Enjoyed many meals in Kuwaiti homes of friends and amazing restaurants. For those of you that have never traveled to Kuwait, I strongly recommend it. And after you hear from the ambassador today, you'll realize as well, especially for the students in the crowd, is how close in intellectuality and how close in relations and ties our countries are. Today, Kuwait remains an important country in the Middle East, playing a vital role in fighting terrorism, developing international markets, and establishing peace in the region. There is much to be learned about the partnerships between our two countries, and we look forward to learning more. Her Excellency Sheikha Zain al-Sabah was appointed ambassador to the United States in March of 2023 by His Highness the Emir of the State of Kuwait. Ambassador al-Sabah is Kuwait's first female ambassador to the United States and brings with her extensive experience in journalism, youth development, advocacy, and policy. In her former role, she served as chairperson and CEO of the National Creative Industries Group, an organization she founded to produce impact-driven content that bridges Eastern and Western markets. Prior to heading NCIG, she served as the Undersecretary of State for Youth Affairs in Kuwait, where she spearheaded a number of initiatives alongside the Arab League on programs that resulted in the naming of Kuwait as the Youth Capital of the Middle East. She is the recipient of the Arab Women Award for Inspirational Women of the Year in 2015, and I'll tell you, most of the women that I met in Kuwait were inspirational. Business women, family women, it was incredible. The Leaders Middle East Power Woman of Arabia Award in 2015, the United Arab Media Council's 2017 Haytham Media Award, and Boston University College of Communications Distinguished Alumni Award of Service to Profession in 2010. We will not hold against her that she's a BU grad. Ambassador al-Sabah comes to us with a robust history of civil service. Her Excellency will be joined in dialogue by Professor Fahad Ahmed Bshara, who is an Associate Professor of Indian Ocean History and the Ruhollah Ramazani Associate Professor of Arabian Peninsula and Gulf Studies in the UVA Corcoran Department of History. It's a long title, Dr.
It was a very long title.
Professor Bshara specializes in the economic and legal history of the Indian Ocean and Islamic world. He is the author of A Sea of Debt, Law and Economic Life in the Western Indian Ocean, 1780 to 1950. His forthcoming book, Monsoon Voyagers, An Indian Ocean History, tells the history of the Gulf and Indian Ocean from the deck of a 20th century dhow sailing ship and draws on the experiences of captain families from Kuwait. I can't wait to read that one. He is the recipient of numerous distinguished awards, Dr. Bshara is also a Kuwaiti professor. Thank you for being here and for joining us today.
Thank you,
Saat Safira, Your Excellency, welcome to the Commonwealth of Virginia, to grounds of one of our top public Virginia universities, Mr. Jefferson's University. On behalf of the UVA Center for Politics and UVA Global, thank you for being a part of the Ambassador Series, UVA's Global Week, and for helping us to expand our knowledge of your beautiful country, Kuwait. Welcome. Sharafti. All yours.
Can everybody hear me? Yes? Oh, I was told that this was just for recording purposes
so
and not for amplification.
This is actually quite fun.
Yeah. Oh,
well,
welcome, Sheikh Zain, to UVA, and it's a pleasure to see our students here. I know a couple of them in the room, and it's really lovely to have you in Charlottesville. Being the only Kuwaiti, I think, in a sort of 50-mile radius, within a 50-mile radius, it's especially refreshing to have somebody from my own country here, and it's a very nice feeling. So I have a series of questions for you.
The feeling is reciprocated.
Yeah, well, you have many more Kuwaitis around you.
No, but ditto, here especially at UVA.
Thank you very much. So they've given me a series of questions, and then so I'm going to sort of go off of the script a little bit,
sure.
Ground myself roughly in the script. So first, the question is just to orient our audience here, many of whom probably would not be able to point out Kuwait on a map, but have very sort of rough idea of where it might be. To speak about Kuwait and its relationship with the United States, the US and Kuwait have maintained a very close relationship for a number of decades, but especially since the 1990 Gulf War. And we're privileged to have here the family of the former ambassador to Kuwait during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, Nat Howell, who was under siege in the American embassy for the duration of the Gulf War. A truly heroic story for those who don't know anything about it. But how would you describe the relationship between Kuwait and the United States since the Gulf War, which is, at this point, it's hard for me to believe, but really, 30 plus years ago, 35 years ago almost. What is the current state of affairs between Kuwait and the United States? What are the latest developments in the Kuwaiti-American relationship?
Thank you, Professor Bshara. Thank you, Damon. Thank you, David. It's such an incredible honor and privilege to be at UVA. So from our dunes to your grounds, I look forward to sharing. I look forward to learning, since I now know from Damon that this is an institution that likes to practice lifelong learning. I'm, by the way, a year 2 diplomat. So just for everybody here to know, since I guess you're not using the word sophomore either. So it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to the exchange. As far as the relationship since 1991, I think there's an important element here that I also need to mention. The fact that, yes, absolutely, prior to the brutal invasion of Kuwait in 1990, the US and Kuwait had an incredibly strong relationship. It started absolutely with our diplomatic ties. However, a lot of people don't know that it actually started way back before then, in 1914, when the US opened the American hospital in Kuwait as part of its missionary goals moving forward. It was a Protestant group that was there, and they offered health care for free to all those who needed it. So just that in and of itself just shows the incredibly strong bond between the United States and Kuwait. That obviously was tested, that relationship, and further developed and evolved when we unexpectedly were invaded by a neighbor who we had considered to be a friend in 1990, August 2nd, 1990. The United States led a global coalition to liberate Kuwait, and Ambassador Howell was an incredible leader on that front in Kuwait. He actually refused to leave Kuwait, even though his life was put at risk. And I remember that incredible photo of him at the embassy that everybody knows about, him just trying to keep his team together and trying to stay safe against all odds, quite literally. He was being targeted each and every day. Since that since the liberation of Kuwait, I would say that the relationship has grown and developed even more. It is one that is described by just incredible. I can't even describe it as a relationship, it's a partnership. It's a fully fledged partnership. It's one that was forged in blood and cemented by peace. So in that aspect, the Kuwaiti people will never, ever forget their service and sacrifice of the US Armed Forces that took part in the liberation of our country. And from that kind of consciousness, we have evolved and our relationship has developed. And it's one that is described by incredible synergy, whether it's economic synergy, military synergy, diplomatic synergy. We share social values across the board. So I'm happy to report it's more robust than ever. We've had incredible developments since then. On the military front, we have a defense cooperation agreement with the United States since the early I want to say 1992, I believe, is when we signed that. So DCA came into play, and what that essentially means, our coalition or our alliance has been cemented further through mutual security and the defense of our assets mutually. To kind of translate also what that means on the ground, that means that when the United States is in the Middle East, they can depend on Kuwait to provide shelter and support at any time. We house the fourth largest presence of US personnel, servicemen and women in Kuwait. I think so the only countries that house more US personnel than we do are Germany, Japan, and South Korea. We're very proud of that, and I'll give you an example of how that comes into play. Realistically speaking, for instance, when we saw the downfall of Saddam Hussein in 2003 and then the eventual pullout of US troops from Iraq in 2011, Kuwait was the place where they transited. When we saw the movement away from Afghanistan, same thing. Kuwait was the place, the safe harbor where they could transit. We open access to the US across the board, and we open our homes to the men and women that we have the pleasure of hosting in Kuwait. Kuwait is also a key partner in the global, you mentioned Professor Bashara and David also, the global coalition to defeat ISIS. That is very important in our part of the world because we want to make sure that our borders are secure, maritime and land borders. We want to make sure that we have a mechanism in place for counterterrorism and for arms exchange, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is something that we take very seriously. That is a role we take very seriously. And actually, we were in DC last month with our team, our counterterrorism team, partaking in the annual meetings for that coalition. Also, I mean, there's so much.
Yes, there's a lot.
There's a lot. We also, on the diplomatic front, perhaps, Professor, you know this, Kuwait plays a very, we're a small country, but we're very influential when it comes to mediation in our part of the world. And so the US has been an incredible supporter of our diplomatic efforts. We have 42 agreements and MOUs since having this partnership and this relationship with the United States. 6 of those are trade and investment agreements. Our sovereign wealth fund, which is actually the oldest sovereign wealth fund in the world and the 5th largest, invests 50% of its capital in the United States. That's approximately 1.79% of US's GDP. And through those investments, we employ thousands of Americans across all sectors. And we're very proud of that because that, for us, allows us to even develop mutually and jointly and start to explore new opportunities for trade and investment. On the cultural front, we do a lot of cross-cultural programs. The US is the #1 destination for our students. We need more students at UVA, though, so we need to work on that. Damon, we need to work on that. But it is the #1 destination for our young men and women, and also the tourist destination for our larger community population. We signed a TIFA in 2004 as well. We are a major non-NATO ally, which is a big deal as well, because for us, we have all the benefits of being part of that alliance, and that gives you an indication of how important our presence in the Middle East is to the United States, and vice versa. What else am I forgetting?
Well,
I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot.
Maybe if
by
I
the
can
way.
get you to speak more to it, because the students here, members of the audience, might know one or two places in the Middle East and have a very general sense of what Middle Eastern political regional dynamics might be. And so if you could tell us about what Kuwait's sort of diplomatic role is. You mentioned mediation, you mentioned all of these things. A little bit more about what is the role of, what role does Kuwait play in regional in regional relationships? How might we place Kuwait on the sort of diplomatic map of the Middle East? And very quickly, we mentioned the ambassador. I should say to the students already, the late ambassador was a graduate of the University of Virginia three times over. Yes, yeah, and his widow Margie Howell and his son Chip are both in attendance and are both UVA alumni.
And Chip looks exactly like his late father. It's scary. It's really
You should see him in shorts. So.
I'll take you up on that. So I think there's I think a lot to be said here about Kuwait's role just in the region. The region is not a place is a very challenging place, right, to be. Kuwait operates very much, as you know, Professor Bshara, below the radar. Mm-hmm. We like to be quite stealth in our undertakings, but really I think it's in our DNA to have this consensus building and community building in everything we do, the sense of just making sure that we have the buy-in of the community in everything that we do. And then coupled with that, we also have creativity in our DNA. So we approach a lot of situations in the Middle East, whether it's locally or regionally, with that mindset, with that consensus building, community-driven, creative, constructive mindset. And one example of that would be our late Amir, Allah yarhamah, Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jabr Sabah. He was an incredible diplomat. It was for him a skill set that was quite unique, but also that very much depended on the fact that we were strategically and geographically vulnerable. We live in a very tough part of the world. And he was our foreign minister before he was our emir. Of course, he was our prime minister before he was our emir, but he was our foreign minister for 40 years, and he dictated so much of what we do today as far as mediators. And I think, he was known as the dean of Arab diplomacy for good reason, because he did that, and he did that across the board, and not just in the Middle East, I have to add. Throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and as late as 2021, whether it was an issue with Pakistan and Bangladesh in 1974, or if it was Saudi and Egypt and North Yemen, or in 1989, I remember it was Bulgaria and Turkey. He was there, and he mediated. And then more recently, the rift, the Saudi-Qatari rift. So he was our father as far as Arab diplomacy goes. He was our teacher, he was our mentor, and for us to pretty much make sure that his legacy still lives today is for us a priority. So yes, Kuwait lives in a tough part of the world. It's about, we're very aware of the multifaceted challenges that we face that involve engagement, diplomacy. It involves consensus building, economic considerations, and for us, a commitment to neutrality.
Oh, thank you. Now, speaking of the neighborhood, so to speak, not the DC neighborhood, but nor the Charlottesville neighborhood, but the Gulf.
I don't know if it's different though.
The DC
at
or
this
Charlottesville?
Point, no, Charlottesville. I thought in the Middle East, DC, Middle East. It's not very easy. Both of them aren't very easy to navigate at the moment.
There's the issue of, in the last several years, one of the issues that has cropped up over and over again is the American relationship to Iran and the sort of the place of different Gulf states in mediating that relationship and brokering some sort of relationship between Kuwait and Iran. And I wonder if you could speak to that generally, to Kuwait's place specifically. American relations with Iran are generally are not very robust, we can say, but in the last several years have maybe reached an all-time low. And I wonder what the sort of somebody in your position might have to say about that and the place of Kuwait and other states.
Right. Well, the relationship, first of all, between Kuwait and Iran is one that's always been marked by tension and cooperation at the same time. And it's influenced by regional dynamics and by historical grievances and by national and security interests, right? I think for us, we're very aware of the delicate balance that we have to maintain while also making sure that and respecting the fact that we have partners in the world that we absolutely align on all fronts, the United States being one. So it is a balance that we keep. But I need to put something into context here. You know, when I'm home in Kuwait and at my house in Kuwait, I hear what's happening in Iran, not because I get a news alert, but because I actually can feel the ground shaking. That's how close we are to Iran, geographically speaking. As a little girl, I remember going to the beach, don't do the math please, during the Iran-Iraq war. And I literally remember seeing come up on the shore just corpses from the war, right? So that's how close we are. We cannot alienate or isolate ourselves from Iran. We just can't. Right. We don't have the luxury, right? We need to engage with Iran. And for a country like Kuwait to engage with Iran diplomatically is a very good thing for the United States. We do not want to isolate a country like Iran. A stable and engaged Iran is a secure and stable region. And also I can argue a prosperous Iraq and stable and secure Iraq is a prosperous Gulf. So I hope.
Yeah, that's terrific. And I mean, to that I would add, as a historian, I'm not a political scientist, but as a historian, I would add that the historic ties between the Persian side of the Gulf and the Arab side of the Gulf are quite deep, and we have a number of communities in Kuwait along the Gulf that have family ties to or roots in the Iranian side, and so you know it is very much woven into the fabric of Kuwaiti society. Actually, 100%. It's not some foreign place.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. We have 30-40% of our community is Shiite, and that we're so proud of that. We're so proud of our community, the diversity of it, everything that kind of that meeting of hearts and minds brings to the table. Kuwait is a valley, geographically speaking. It's quite literally a valley. So in addition to the oil that trickles in, it's ideas that trickle in. It's food, it's music, it's ideas. And they trickle in from all around. They trickle in from Iraq, from across the Arabian Gulf, from Iran, and from Saudi, and from all over the Middle East. And it's something that makes Kuwait super special on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to turn it over to the audience, but before I do, there's no way we can talk about Kuwait, the Middle East, the United States today without talking about the issue of Palestine and what's been happening in Palestine, especially over the last year, the absolute horrors that we've had to bear witness to. And I wonder, for those in the room who don't know what the position of Kuwait might be on the Palestinian question, if you could clarify for the people in the room what the Kuwait's position on the Palestinian question is, Kuwait's ties to Palestine. And then, we've also in the last, especially in the late spring, we saw a wave of demonstrations across U.S. universities, pro-Palestinian demonstrations sweep U.S. universities, including our own university here. You and I were walking by the rotunda earlier, and we had a sort of a pro-Palestinian encampment that had set up right there, which many in the room will know. You might know as well. The university administration acted, I have to say, publicly quite shamefully on. This is one of the most brutal and horrific days that we've had to witness on this at this university. And so I wonder if you could tell us what the Kuwaiti position on the Palestinian question is, but also given that you are the Kuwaiti ambassador to the U.S., given that you are the head of a large body of also Kuwaiti students, you are, in a sense, you are our representative here. And I'm no longer a student, I'm a faculty member, of course, but you're still my representative here. And those of us who don't have a voice in this country and yet feel, as Kuwaitis, feel an enormous amount of sympathy for what's happening. I wonder if you could speak to the climate around this question, in addition to Kuwait's position, which those of us who are Kuwaiti, we know well what the position is. But I wonder if you can speak, if we can speak frankly about this, because there's been an atmosphere of silence around this.
Professor Bishara, I'm a diplomat, but I'm not necessarily diplomatic. So,
well, that's good. You're in good company.
Exactly. So that's one. Two, Kuwait's position on the Palestine issue has never shifted since day one, since more than 70 years ago. We reclaim and reaffirm the need for the Palestinian people to live securely, peacefully, distinguished, respected, with dignity, and with a state of their own, independent, free state of their own, according to international law, according to the Arab Peace Initiative, and according to all the related Security Council, UN Security Council, and General Assembly resolutions. We affirm that unconditionally they have the right to their own country. They have the right to voice who they want as their leadership moving forward. What is happening right now on the ground in Gaza is beyond diplomatic vocabulary or human logic, for that matter. It's been now more than a year of a horrific, incredibly intense bombardment of a civilian population. We haven't seen anything like this since World War II. 43,000, more than 43,000 dead, half of which are women and children. An entire population, almost an entire population displaced. Entire villages, towns, communities completely destroyed. The surviving Palestinians live with great indignity everywhere they go. The ones stuck in the north are just waiting to die. They're waiting to die either by airstrike or starvation. And in the meantime, in the West Bank, violence is escalating as well. And the war has spilled over now to Lebanon with grave circumstances as well. So for us, our position in Kuwait is enough is enough. It's been 75 years of this. This didn't start on October 7th. We would never condone what happened on October 7th. What happened was horrific. And when we talk about any sort of mistreatment of a human being is something that we would never allow, let alone criminal mistreatment. Now that said, what we want today is we call for an urgent and immediate ceasefire. We call for an urgent and immediate withdrawal of Israeli military operations from Gaza, and the blockade, to stop the humanitarian blockade of Gaza as well. In the meantime, to start work on developing that plan towards an independent Palestinian state.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to questions. Damon, are you going to be fielding questions, or do you? Yes, okay.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. All right, we'll start off with our questions. My colleague Meg will take a mic as well. And we'll alternate different sides of the room. If you can, just, keep your questions relatively brief so we can get in as many as possible, because I'm sure you have lots. We have so many smart students and faculty and guests here. So we'll go right ahead. Who would like to ask the first question? Does anyone have anything in mind?
As a professor here, I can say whenever you ask a group like this, you say, do you have any questions? A hand never goes up. Well,
Here we
We should ask
We
them
have
the
a hand
questions and they
right
should
back
ask
here,
us.
our brave student. If you could say your name and your year and what you're studying.
Yes. Hi, very nice to meet you. My name is Mariam Sheikh. I'm a second year hoping to pursue global studies here. And first, I want to thank you for being so honest and understanding about, Kuwait and Lebanon's stance on Palestine. It's a breath of fresh air in this, atmosphere of ambiguity and silence. I guess my question, is it's a bit of a pivot from what you just spoke about, but you worked to declare Kuwait the youth capital, right, of the Middle East. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your work that you've done to support youth innovation.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the question. As far as the positioning of Kuwait, 72% of our population are below the age of 34. So to say, it was that the youth population runs Kuwait is an understatement, right? They are the majority, and they're a shining majority at that. I didn't have to do much work as Undersecretary for the Ministry of State for Youth Affairs because the Kuwaiti youth are exceptional. I had to just follow their lead. So what we did basically is say, what do you want for your future moving forward? And we laid out the plan with their support, and we went out and visited across. We had 6 governments in Kuwait, so we put together all their dreams and aspirations and put it in a fully fledged strategic plan with clear KPIs, and we have a national youth policy unlike any other. And hence that's the reason, coupled with the fact, again, that our youth population is just an incredibly innovative and creative population in and of itself. We have an incredibly vibrant SME community. We are very entrepreneurial by spirit, and in our DNA, I can even argue from the formation of Kuwait. We've learned really from the ocean a sense of adventure, and from the desert a sense of resilience. And you can see that in our youth today. They've just absolutely inherited it from their ancestors. So they love to think outside the box. They love to absolutely work on a grassroots level within the community, and they love to do it on a top-down and bottom-up approach. And so the National Youth Policy is something that we're very proud of, and we continue to build on it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Ambassador. My name is Mary, and I'm a 4th year at the University of Virginia. I kind of have a 2-part question. Which experience has been most helpful for your time as being a diplomat? And second, what has been the most surprising thing during your time as a diplomat? Or as an ambassador, I'm sorry.
Thank you. The first one was the most interesting, or the most, I'm sorry, Mary, what was the first? Helpful. I think I would say the incredible community of women diplomats in DC. We have 50+ women diplomats today in DC, and that has been very helpful. Because, as I'm sure I can speak, I apologize, gentlemen, I'll speak on behalf of the women in this room. It's not easy to be in a male-dominated environment when you need to push the envelope and you need to continue to break that class ceiling. And having that community of women readily available and open at any time to take your questions, to give their support, to even the simplest question, like, what am I supposed to be doing in this room? Who do I speak, on the Hill should I go see about pushing education for women across the world? Just these things matter, and so that presence has been incredible to have these incredible sisters, diplomatic sisters in DC. Something that's interesting, something that I found to be interesting, because I'm not a career diplomat, I'm a political appointee. and I should say a recovering journalist, it was very hard for me to be diplomatic in my role. And so when I asked, I asked a bunch of my colleagues who worked in diplomacy and a lot of my mentors if they would give me words of advice before I came to DC, and they said, they said to me, just be yourself, just more diplomatic. And of course that was impossible, right? So I found that I just needed to be myself and be more human. And I think I chose humanship over leadership. And I choose that every day.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. It was very interesting. My name is Coco and I'm a first year. I'm really interested in particularly your experiences in journalism. How that informs how you carry out your work today, and B, how media and journalism more generally as fields and as mediums of discussion and information, how that can support the kind of work that you do in civil service and humanitarianism.
Can I add to that question? Actually, it's an excellent question. Earlier we were speaking, and you mentioned that you're a graduate of the USC School of Cinema Television as well. So to add to that, your background in film studies, how it's shaped your trajectory here.
It dictates everything I do. It's my GPS. My inner coordinates are narratives, the human experience, and how can we better situate ourselves to allow for a wider lens, right? So this is how I view everything. When I was asked to, and I had the honor to be asked to do this job, first of all, I thought it was a big mistake. I thought they wanted someone else, and the call came through, and I said, "Are you sure you have the right person?" But when I was asked to take this job, and after considering it and saying absolutely taking on this challenge, I came to the realization that diplomacy is very much like bridge building, storytelling. It's all about how you bring often conflicting mindsets together. Very much like putting together different stories or building out business plans for potential media acquisitions, right? It's as intrinsic as that in some cases. But I think, coming to this world of diplomacy from a background of journalism, you're absolutely always inquisitive. You're absolutely always open to different interpretations. I used to work in New York City for ABC News, actually, in my early career, for World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, the late Peter Jennings, and I learned a lot from him. He was an incredible storyteller. And he had assigned me to cover the UN during my time in New York. And I was charged with, I found myself charged with translating in some cases between different delegations. And a lot of times it was Arab delegations with US or European delegations. And I found that to be diplomacy, right? I was there as a journalist, starting off as an intern, actually, and then working my way up. But that was very diplomatic in its nature. I learned a lot from that. And then moving forward from there, building out, just different units where I could tell stories in different ways. And that's where, the film background came in, and building teams around a story was interesting. Very much like we do today when we try to build policy. You build teams that have buy-in into this policy so that you can better tell a story and that you can better bridge that gap, and the story becomes more relatable and adaptable to everybody. So everything I do today is based on the idea of storytelling. And I just want to add one point about journalism here. This is what pains me even more about the fact that the Palestinian, the horror that we're seeing on the ground in Gaza, the fact that there are no journalists allowed on the ground. That kills me, because I come from, proudly so, trained in the US, in the journalistic field, where I know how critical it is to have that open and free press, where I know how access is important to get that 180-degree picture. And the fact that we're not allowing, the world community is not allowing Western, especially Western journalists, into Gaza is for me just no words. Yeah. Thank you.
No worries. Ahmed Rahim, I'm a professor of Islamic Studies in the Department of Religious Studies. I'm actually curious, and if you don't mind the historical nature of the question, but Kuwait used to have a very rich tradition on the left, quite rich. I mean, one that perhaps even came close in some respects to the Communist Party in Iraq. And I wonder what the state of the left is in Kuwait. I mean, there was a very vibrant labor movement. There were, of course, a very strong secularist movement. And I just wonder what the state of the left is right now in Kuwait.
I think I can say that the state of the left, right, and center are very vibrant and very dynamic and very vocal. We're very proud of that. We have a very open society, one that feels very much comfortable in sharing their viewpoints across the board. Again, it is something that I think just absolutely aligns with our open society system. So I'm not quite clear as to what precisely you mean, who and what precisely you mean by the left, but, and maybe Professor Bishara, you have a bit of insight on this, maybe you can help me out with this one. But I think they're there, and I have a lot of friends that I know very much are part of the left, so, and they're very vocal, and I actually spoke to them, one of them today, and they keep us absolutely energized for sure. Oh no, we have, Kuwait is, again, we have associations, unions, jam'iyat, cooperatives, diwaniyas in and of itself, which is a form of open platform for open conversation and discourse always. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can add to that, and I can say that the kind of leftist agitation that you're asking about, like, to where is the old left in the arena of politics? I mean, part of that is the question is, where is the old left anywhere, right? There's no old left anymore anywhere in the world, and especially not in the Middle East. These are forces that have largely dissipated, and we might say that that's a result of like a broader sort of trend towards neoliberalism globally. Not that I'm in a position to have to defend my country at all, but I can say that in terms of political expression, Kuwait is still quite active and quite vibrant, much more so than many of the other Middle Eastern countries, certainly many of the other Gulf countries. We have a very active press, sometimes by some estimations, maybe a little bit too active. And the arena of political participation in the National Assembly goes through its ebbs and flows, and of course there are lots. I mean, the old left is only one of many, we might say, sort of political ideologies, the political currents that run through the country. There are, of course, the more conservative ones, the Islamists, and all of these find expression at different moments in the country's history. But the truth is that it is still quite tangible when one is there. Kuwaitis are still a very politically active, politically active society, and the degree of political consciousness is really, I mean, just simply on on this question, the Palestinian question, there's truly, I mean, in the Gulf at least, arguably the Arabian Peninsula, with maybe the exception of Yemen, but we can bracket that because the Houthis don't speak for the Yemenis at all. But there's not been any society quite as vocal in its commentary and its criticism of what's been happening in Palestine than the Kuwaitis have. Truly, it's unmatched in that respect.
I hope that answered. Yeah? Okay.
Hi, thank you, Ambassador, for being here, and thank you, Professor Bishara. My name's Loretta. I'm a fourth-year history major, and I'm curious to what extent you and Kuwait prepare for like the U.S. election and potential changes in policies, and like I guess just the extent of that preparation and what it could mean for Kuwait.
Thank you. We are happy to work with either administration. We work with the United States, period. We work with the United States, the people of the United States, period. Leadership is decided by the people of the United States, so we absolutely await and look forward to working with whoever is in the White House. For us, even not just in Kuwait, in the larger Gulf, that really, it doesn't really affect the dynamics of the relationship. There's just too much at stake in that part of the world. The United States, their interests are very deep in the Gulf especially, and their relationships are as deep as well. So at the end of the day, the transience of the White House leadership for us just means that we await every 4 years to see who we're going to be working with, but otherwise, it's standard operating procedure for us.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm currently a junior in high school, but I heard you earlier talked about how it feels being a woman in politics, and I've seen it in the 2016 election when I was much younger, and now in the 2024 election, how the public is responding to that, and you touched on being a journalist and how you've had advice to be more diplomatic, and I can definitely understand how it feels to make yourself more palatable for other people, and I was curious about how that is in Kuwait. Is it similar? Are there more female politicians in Kuwait as the United States, or is it a lot harder there?
Right, so very quickly, Kate, can I ask you, you're a junior in high school. Why aren't you in school right now? What happened? Did they?
We have a whole.
No.
Yeah, we came as a group trip.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Actually, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I'll add.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate.
They're from the Miller School of Albemarle, and
Oh.
we developed a nice relationship together, so welcome to you all.
So you didn't have the day off like Professor Bishara's kids did?
Yeah, my kids. Okay. My kids are driving us crazy at
Thank you
home.
for taking the time, because I know you could be
different
somewhere
story.
else. There you go. So in Kuwait, I actually feel more empowered as a woman in leadership than I did initially in DC. Now it's changed, it's shifted again. The sorority of diplomats that I have in DC has immensely helped with the transition. But in Kuwait, it's just a very holistic and organic environment for women to really just be themselves and not have to not have to adhere to any kind of preconceived notion of what it means to be a leader, whether it's at home, first and foremost, right, as a mother, or in the workplace. And so in Kuwait especially, it's, would I like to see more women in government? Absolutely. In key leadership roles in government? Absolutely. But also I have to say, we do have a substantial number of women leaders in government, and especially in the private sector. And also, we can do some work on the parliament side, though. We need more representation on the parliament side. But women are quite strong and vocal in Kuwait and play a major role across all sectors, the economic sector especially. We have incredible bankers and CEOs, and on the medical sector, incredible surgeons and just teachers. And so happy to report that on the woman-led front in Kuwait, we pretty much got it covered. Can we do better? Of course, we can always do better.
Yeah.
Incredible entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's true.
Some of the best businesses
Yeah.
ideas in Kuwait are by Kuwaiti women.
Hi, my name is Abdullah Yusufzai. I'm a third-year foreign affairs major. And I had a question with respect to Kuwait's relationship with Saudi Arabia given the Israel-Palestine issue. MBS has been reported to say some inflammatory things. There was a fatwa by Sheikh Sudais. It seems like Saudi Arabia is a pretty staunch ally of Israel in some ways. So I'm wondering how the duality of that plays out, given what you said, and how it is, how the relationships are with Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. Of course, our relationship with Saudi Arabia as well as the GCC countries is ironclad. I don't see how Saudi is in any way, shape, or form ready to or as your usage of the word, I'm sorry, if you can repeat, the Saudis are?
I said allies.
Allies.
Yeah.
Allies of Israel. That's absolutely inaccurate. I'm not going to use sources that are, for me, discredited on my front. Misinformation, disinformation. Unfortunately, today is very. It's very clear that there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been very clear about his requirements when it comes to dealing with Israel, especially when it comes to the Palestinian-Israel situation. Very clear that the Palestinians, like Kuwait, Saudi feels absolutely need and are entitled to a state of their own. No discussions will move forward until we can see a clear plan for that. And His Highness has been quite transparent when it comes to that. As far as the work that had been done prior to October 7th, talks between the United States and perhaps Israel on perhaps building a relationship between Saudi and Israel moving forward, that is a different story. That is pre-October 7th, pre-war in Gaza. Now the vocabulary has shifted completely. I don't think you're going to see any movement from Saudi Arabia until we see movement on the Palestinian question and we see actual KPIs when it comes to the formation of a Palestinian state, period.
Hi. First of all, thank you for coming to speak with us. My name is Matt. I'm a first year from Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I came kind of far. It's just kind of my thing. So I kind of have two questions. First of all, I want to ask what it's like to have an emir as the head of Kuwait with a country like Iran on your borders who currently overthrew their monarch and currently have a theocracy as their government in Iran. And then the second one has to do with the Palestine question of with wanting Palestine to have a state, do you also believe that the Kurds in Turkey deserve a state as well in that respect?
Thank you. Austin.
Yes. Austin, Texas. Hook 'em horns.
Yes. So I can't compare the Iran experience with the Kuwait experience. Kuwait is a country built on consensus. We don't have a royal family. We have a ruling family, and there's a difference. We were brought into power, as the Al-Sabah family had been, by vote. The Kuwaiti people needed a judge, a judicial system. And so they brought us as a family into the Al-Sabahs, into that role to be able to provide that governance. So we're part of the people, we're of the people, and if you come to Kuwait, and we'd love to have you there, I can't describe it. The sense of community in Kuwait is completely different from anything you've seen. Our homes are open to each other. There's no hierarchy in the larger country. When there's a death in any family, you'll find the emir in his car coming to the funeral. Mm-hmm. When there is a wedding, you'll find the emir in his car coming to a wedding. He'll just come in and he'll just say hello to the family. It's a very nomadic and very organic way to build relationships. We're intermarried. The intermarriages between the families are it's very intertwined. So it's a completely different experience from any of our, not just Iran, from our neighbors. It's completely different. When I have friends come to visit from any of the Arab countries, they come and they're surprised because of this connection that we have, the larger connection that the ruling family has with the community. I don't know. I can't speak. Yeah. Maybe I can't be. Yeah. Maybe you can be also. You can be a bit more.
Sure. Yeah. I can say when one of my best friends passed away, the emir came to this person's funeral. This is one of my best friends, of no consequence whatsoever. We were 20-something at the time. But he came anyway. When my father passed away, the emir was also there, and the relationship between the sort of state and the subjects in Kuwait is not the same as it's hard to the comparison to pre-revolutionary Iran is a flawed one. That the Pahlavi monarchy saw itself over and above their subjects. They had privileges that none of their subjects could possibly access. They imagined themselves in a very, very different light than the ruling family of Kuwait does. And I will echo what Sheikh Hazain had said. The ruling family of Kuwait emerged by consensus. The majority of the people in Kuwait at the time, in the pre-oil era, the families were involved in the maritime trade or in the desert trade. To be the ruler was you, and we have just countless accounts of this. They were called first among equals. They were not seen as some sort of some special family, no special descent or anything like that. They were elected in a sense, or they were nominated by the population to represent them in various diplomatic dealings, and that freed up the time for everybody else so that they can go off and do their business elsewhere. So the dynamic between the ruling family and the rest of the Kuwaiti population, that dynamic, the pre-oil dynamic, actually continued well into the oil era. There are, of course, differences, but on the whole, the relationship is quite close. I feel strange saying that because I feel like I'm up here like amplifying some like propaganda on behalf of the country. I'm not. Anybody who knows me knows that I don't do that sort of a thing at all. I'm a historian, and I will tell you what it is. And I actually study these things. I study Kuwait and the history of the Gulf, and I can tell you that these are, without exceptionalizing it, these are sort of historically specific formations, political formations that emerge in these places due to, in large part, the material circumstances that these communities faced. And like it could not be further from, as an example, further from Iran, which, the Pahlavi dynasty came at the heels of the Qajari dynasty, which came at the heels of the Safavids. I mean, it's a very different kind of politics or political formation that we're talking about here. Sorry, I didn't mean to lecture.
I think there was a second part of his questions regarding the Kurds in Turkey and whether they're entitled. I don't have enough information to answer your question, but I can certainly talk to you after that, after the session.
Well, Your Excellency, we thank you so much for the time you've given us today.
It's a pleasure.
We could spend, I'm sure, hours together.
Yes.
But we are most grateful to you.
I apologize if anybody had a question. Certainly, I can take some questions after.
Sure.
Yes.
That sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to appreciate
Thank
Your
you so much.
Excellency.
This is very nice. Thank you.
Professor Bashara, thank you very much. And Professor Ramadan. And for those who are UVA students who are participating in Global Week, be sure to take your Global Week tickets directly to the Global Week tent and be a part of that raffle. So, Your Excellency, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.